Hey everyone, welcome to Dangerous Werewolf. Are you brave enough to step into the perilous world of werewolves with me? Here, we'll uncover the secrets, face the fears, and explore the thrilling and dangerous aspects of these mythical creatures. So hold on tight and let's start this wild adventure together. Attempted escape, oh crap. I dropped the phone from my hands, letting it crash onto the hardwood floor. It landed with a thud and I cringed, hoping that no werewolf henchman was nearby that could hear me on the phone. If they relayed the information to Jason, then I'm frickin' dead thanks to this last resort BS. I picked the phone back up and carefully put it back onto the receiver. Straining my ears, I guessed that I was in the clear because I didn't hear running up to the house right now. I couldn't call Vincent because he didn't take his cell phone with him and he hid us in the other territory of which I have no idea, the name or the location. At least Jessie was safe, hopefully. I know she can't run that fast and she isn't the smartest person in the world either. Then my thoughts traveled back to Danny. Poor Annie. She was killed by Psycho all because of my stubbornness. Man, if I was such an ass towards the werewolves, then it's pretty safe to assume that I never would have met Jason and that she would still be alive. And it'd be safe with Vincent. That's it. I need to find Vincent. And the only way I can do that is to leave this territory. But there's no way I could be able to do that without escaping Jason and his henchmen. He had said that his men were watching me today, but they must have been hiding out in the forest in the back of the house on account of I haven't seen them at all yet. And how am I going to get past them? The only thing that popped into my head was to just run like crazy and pray that a werewolf wouldn't notice me. But I'm fairly positive that wouldn't work at all. Then an idea popped into my head. I rushed over to the kitchen counters, pulling open one of the drawers directly under the large crack that Jason caused in his fit. And there was all the eating utensils. I grabbed one of the butter knives, its chrome finish shining in the fluorescent lighting. Perfect. All I have to do is convince the wolf that tries to catch me that I have silver, and then he should grow afraid to get near me. Hopefully, my knife in hand, I hurried over to the kitchen window. I undid the lock and slid it open, popping out the screen. Seriously, if Jason wanted to make the doors hard to leave out of, one would think HED work on the windows as well. Oh well, I shoved myself through the window, falling onto my ass as soon as I was outside. It was really cloudy and looked as if it were about rain. However, the air was very dry, getting rid of all the moisture in my mouth. Or maybe I was just terrified out of my mind. Yeah, it's most likely the second one. My heart was slamming against my ribcage, loud enough for all the werewolves in the territory to hear. I threw myself off the ground and rushed over to the tree line. All I can remember from the outside world during the drive back here was a lot of trees, so that made it safe to assume that the territory where Vincent is lies on the other side of the forest. The forest wasn't too far from Jason's house, so I reached it in a matter of seconds. My feet were slapping against the ground pretty loudly, so there was no doubt in my mind that a werewolf heard me. I clutched the knife in my hand even tighter. In the forest, all the trees looked the same. In no time I was lost. Crap. I hissed to myself. Now Nora, that's not really proper language for a lady, is it? Asked a voice behind me. I tensed and turned around, only to be confronted by Kyle from school. Haven't seen him in a while, but then again that's kind of a good thing. What are you doing here? I demanded, hiding my knife behind my back. Kyle chuckled and took a step forward. Alpha gave me explicit orders to make sure you don't leave the house. I took a step away from him, my breathing starting to speed up. So see on Nora, he said, holding out his hand. Let's go back to your house. I pulled the knife out, pointing at him. I even shifted my stance into attack mode to intimidate him. although Kyle probably heard my erratic heartbeat. "I'm not going anywhere with you," I spat. Kyle laughed. "What is that? A butter knife?" He doubled over in hysterics. "You're gonna scrape me to death." Well, that deflated my shard of confidence. Kyle now fell onto the ground, holding his sides as he laughed at me. "That's just a myth. Damn." So there went my master plan for escape. The smart thing to do here would be just walk back to Jason's house with Kyle and accept my fate. But something inside them shouted at me that I haven't made smart decisions so far. So why start now? I dashed over to Kyle, who was still laughing on the floor. I swung back my foot, then brought it crashing into his jaw. The collision hurt my toes like a bitch, but it was oh so satisfying to see Kyle's head jerk back. His laughter immediately stopped and he spit out a little blood that had pooled in his mouth. "The fuck?" he yelled at me. I just smirked back. "That's right. I'm tough," I said. Kyle snarled and stood up, popping his neck to look badass. "You're going down, human," he growled, baring his canines at me. "Shit." Kyle lurched, tackling me to the ground. My head the ground pretty hard, making my vision all spotty. No, this can't be it. Kyle smirked down at me. "Werewolves always win, human," he snarled. "You're all below us." "Fuck you," I screamed, spitting at him, but because my back was on the ground, the spit just came back down onto my face. This is not my day. There was snarl to the left of me and Kyle, and then in a flash, Kyle was ripped from me and thrown several feet away. I looked up to see Reed standing in a protective stance over me. "What?" I asked. Reed looked down, his face void of any color or life. "It's what Danny would have wanted," he stated in a flat voice. I just nodded, thanking Reed that way. "You get them out of here," came another voice. I looked over to see Crystal. Behind her was Jessie. "We'll take care of the pup." Kyle got back onto his feet, phasing into his wolf form. Crystal laughed. "Oh God, I've be waiting to kick your ass, Kyle. I've always hated you and your stupid family ever since you became our neighbors." She phased and charged at Kyle, snapping her powerful jaws at his neck. Reed pulled me to my feet. "Let's go. Let's a witch. Let's go," he said gruffly. To Jessie and I all ran off deeper into the forest, leaving Crystal as she dominated over Kyle. I looked over at Jessie, who was surprisingly keeping up. "How do you find them?" I asked her. She shrugged. "They found me. I count that as a frickin' miracle." "I got lost as soon as I made it into the tree line," Reed snorted. "She was going the wrong way, towards Alpha's house. That figures. Vincent's in a territory where the humans can leave the Omgiza. It's like a special law there," I said, hoping Reed knew the territory I was talking about. He nodded. "We're going the right way then, but by foot it's going to take a couple of hours." Jessie groaned. Then she let out a scream. Both Reed and I stopped to look at her, but she pointed behind us to the giant wolf chasing after us. Jason. Big bad wolf. There was so much going on for my head at the moment. Danny was dead. Crystal was beating the crap out of Kyle. That was my favorite part. Jessie's life was in danger. Reed was dealing with Danny's death and seemed to want to help me in honor of her memory. And I really needed to get back to Vincent. And it was that last thought that burned into my brain the most. Sorry to my friends and sorry to my being for not putting the charging Alpha as top priority. But the thought of running back to the next territory to be reunited with Vincent seemed like the best idea that I've ever had in my entire life. Still, that would have to wait, unfortunately. I bolted through the forest, and tossed up in the air as I cried out in terror due to the very pissed-off werewolf trailing behind us. The same werewolf who threatened to use the last resort on me to ensure that we'd be together in the afterlife. Jessie pushed further ahead of me, sprinting with all her might, pumping her arms like crazy. "Run, Nora," she shrieked. "No shit." I panted, my feet stomping on the forest floor so hard that the soles throbbed with each contact. Reed phased behind and lunged forward at Jason in order to try to protect us. The curious part of me wanted to look back and watch the fight and root for him, but the rational part of me shouted to keep moving. Sounds of teeth against flesh and deep growls and snarls into the forest, making a cold shiver run through my spine. My mind was frantic, desperate to come up with an idea that would save us. I could just submit to Jason and have everyone else go free, but then I'd die. And by default, Vincent would die too. Fuck. Get out of my head, Vincent. Still, I never took the time to truly focus on the pitiful howl and look that Vincent had when Jason beat him up during our date and stole me away. A mental picture of him sad and curled up on the forest floor in pain was thought-root into my thoughts, making me actually feel guilty for the dude. Damn it. Reed, Jessie shrieked as she glanced behind her. Nora, Jason beat him. That sure didn't help my panicked mind. We were going to die. Yep, that's it for me. I lived a fulfilling life, but not really. I didn't even lose my V card yet, and I'm going to die in a forest at the hands of some obsessive dog. Why does life hate me? Just keep going, I shouted, and don't look back. I was cut off by an immense pain in my shoulder, a black blur in my peripheral. I screamed out in agony as Jason sank his jaws into my flesh, thrashing his head from side to side, making me lose my footing. He swung me to and fro as if I were some rag doll and he was intent on ripping me to shreds. Stop. Jason, I shrieked, pathetically beating my tiny fists on his giant snout. But it all no use. It was as if my hands were paper. Nevertheless, I continued my relentless assault, my knuckles busting open as I tried to stop the werewolf from ripping my shoulder apart. Blood soaked through my shirt and was running down my arms in streams, splattering everywhere I hit Jason. My vision grew blurry and my head began to throb along with my shoulder. Jessie spun around and rushed over to me. "Let go of her, bastard," she yelled, grabbing a tight hold of my feet. She tugged with all of her human might, not freeing me, but at least significantly settling down the thrashing. Jason snarled at her, his blood-stained teeth barely visible to me if I turned my head to the left. Jessie's eyes widened, but she pursed her lips into a thin line and yanked on my legs, kind go tearing my skin more at my shoulder. I cried out for them to stop, but my calls went unheeded. Jason and Jessie playing tug-of-war with my body. Jason jerked backwards and Jessie lost her grip, making my legs fall to the hard ground with a thud. Jason let out a snort, practically taunting her, turning around and dashing through the forest back to his house, with me dangling his muzzle. My vision was almost black and my limbs felt cold as I continued to profusely bleed from my shoulder. "Vincent," I croaked out foolishly. I knew that he wouldn't hear me, but something deep down inside, instincts maybe, told me to call out for him. "I'll find him," Jessie yelled. "I'll find him and I'll kick Jason's furry ass." Jason growled, but continued on his way, his head held up high and his shoulders squared in an idiotic, triumphant manner. The house slowly came into view and then everything went completely black. Remorse. My eyes fluttered open and my head throbbed like crazy. Almost immediately, my shoulder screamed agony and I winced at the slightest movement in my torso, my bloodied shirt sticking to my skin. "What the hell?" I gasped, looking around, quickly noticing that I was back in Jason's room. Luckily, he was nowhere to be seen. I struggled to sit up, but my left arm was practically useless. Below the elbow it felt numb and above, the tea felt as if it were on fire. Yeah, there was serious damage done to me. With a low grunt, with a low grunt. I turned onto my side, a witch eager to try to escape again. I couldn't give up. Vincent needed me, and I needed to get back to him to make sure that he didn't die of heartbreak like his father had. I mean, I wasn't dead yet, so in a way I was trying to prevent him from dying by trying to prevent myself from dying, like a 2-for-1 special for life-saving. I rolled out of the bed, my entire body sore from the whole ordeal earlier. Trudging across the hardwood floor, I reached out for the doorknob to exit the room, only to find that the door wouldn't push out. It was almost as if something was up against it. "Come on," I shouted, pounding against it with my good arm in frustration. "It's no use, mate," I heard Jason's low voice from the other side. That douche must have been sitting on the other side, using his immense bulk to trap me in his bedroom. "Jason," I pleaded, tears welling up in eyes. "Please, Jason, please. Just let me go, and I swear I won't tell anyone. Just let me go, and I won't even go to Vincent. I'll just be on my own way to Florida." He scoffed. "How did he know that?" "I read your file, and it wasn't hard to see that Florida would be where you'd flee since you used to have family there. So you want to go to Florida, a human colony. A colony where I'll have no right to my mate and she can just up and leave me whenever she pleases." He began to raise his voice, practically screaming through the door. "Well, I'll witch, well, yeah. Fuck that. Nora," he shouted. "You're not leaving that room until you promise you'll submit completely to me." "Completely?" I asked. "You mean?" Like, my face grew flushed when I thought about submitting to Jason. I was under the impression that he just wanted me to bare my neck or something to show that I was submissive. "Either you mate with me or we'll do the last resort," he snarled, slamming a hard fist on the door, making me jump back in shock. "I expect an answer by nightfall, which gives you about 3 hours. 3 hours. How long was I out? And why the hell were doing Jason or having him kill me my only options? This sucked. Obviously, I didn't myself to that creepy wolf, but I wasn't prepared to die in rebellion. I droned. "Can't we just be friends?" There was silence, and no doubt Jason was giving me a look that said to stop being an idiot. "Best friends, mate," he snarled. "You heard what I said. Now think it over. Oh, and in the meantime, I'm going to stay right here in this spot, just to make sure that you don't do something foolish, like try to escape again." "Got it." I yanked at my hair in frustration, pacing around the room. What was there I could do? I could just submit, close my eyes, and get it over it. Worst case scenario, I hit myself over the head to knock myself out so that I could be unconscious during the entire thing. I never took werewolf sex ed, so I had no idea what to expect, but judging from Jason's demeanor, he'd probably pound me literally into smithereens. The other option was that I let him kill me. I glanced down at my shoulder, my shirt shredded at it, the dried blood still a little wet and sticky. He'd done some extensive damage to me, a huge chunk of skin missing, showing off some of the muscle underneath. So I guess it's no more bikinis for me. Or maybe there was a third option, go out on my own terms. The window drew in my attention. Maybe if jumped out and tried to land on my thick head, that I could die. That thought sent a ripple of fear through me. Was death really the only way out of this miserable situation that Jason put me in? I never even considered it when I was just stuck with Vincent. So maybe if I did somehow live, I should just shack up with Vincent. Sure, he was possessive and annoying as crap, but at least he never tried to turn me into an amputee. But do I deserve him? I froze instantly at that thought. No, I didn't do anything to deserve Vincent. I had allowed my parents to poison my mind with lies about werewolves, almost to the point of being a blatant racist to their kind. It was sometimes embarrassing to think about it when I remembered how I'd yell at Vincent or how I shouted that I hated him. And still, he had bought me mushroom pizza, my favorite food on the planet. He wanted to provide for me. He bought me clothes, stole me food, and never threatened to last resort me. And I called him some profanity at least every hour on the hour. Damn it, I don't deserve Vincent. Sometimes I wish that he could just have Jessie as a mate. She's nice and deserves to be happy, and she actually appreciates werewolves, seeing them as her equal and not as a rabid animal. Out of nowhere, I collapsed on the floor, pulling my legs into my torso. I sobbed uncontrollably at everything, how I was about to die being abandoned, and by my family Danny's death, and most of all, how horrible I was to Vincent. Tears blinded me as I pathetically lied on the ground, desperate to at least see Vincent one more time to apologize. I didn't care if he didn't want me to be his mate, but I needed to say sorry, if anything. I couldn't die. I couldn't allow Jason to kill me because I needed to see my mate one last time so he wouldn't just see me as some ungrateful bitch. But I couldn't let Jason have me sexually, because I knew deep down that if he did, then I'd be officially his forever, and that would wreck Vincent, and I couldn't allow him to get hurt because of me anymore. I was so confused and lost, so I just continued to sob on the floor, wishing that Vincent was here. Vincent's POV, it took several hours for my wounds to heal. Just focus on anything but Nora. I thought to myself as I lied on my back in the pathetic shack that I was now forced to call my home thanks to that asshole, Jason. With every breath I took, I could slowly feel my bones snapping back into place, my skin sealing back together. It was as if my body knew that I had to go protect and win back my... I had to get better, had to get her back. Regardless, I tried everything not to focus on the thought of her being dragged away from me by my ex, Alpha. The way she looked back at me in pity, almost as if she felt sorry for me. It was a semi-comforting thought that she was concerned for my well-being, but I didn't want my mate to feel bad at all, even if it was for me. I promised myself that I would destroy Jason for making Nora feel even an ounce of negative emotions. After, begrudgingly, getting my ass handed to me, I had to howl out for help, and partially because my wolf was shouting at me to get Nora's attention so that she'd come back. If she sees us in pain, then she'll come back, he reasoned. No, she won't. I had sputtered through gritted teeth, wincing whenever I tried to move a muscle, my body feeling as if each bone was shattered glass. I knew she wouldn't come back, knew that she didn't really want me. My wolf whimpered in depressed agreement, understanding perfectly well that our mate wanted nothing to do with us. Even if I did manage to get her away from, she wouldn't want to live her life as an omega with me. A life where I had to fight other wolves just to get her an apple, where I wouldn't be able to help her go to college, where I wouldn't be able to buy her whatever heart desired. The look of disgust and disappointment that was on Nora's face when she first saw the inside of our new home was stuck in my mind, and it tore me apart because I knew that I had failed her, that I was unable to provide for my mate. Nora deserved a mate who could take care of her, a mate who could make her happy. Come to think of it, one of my favorite phenomena was whenever I'd see her smile. The way her left cheek had a dimple, but the right one didn't. Her gleaming teeth always reflected the sunlight, and whenever she'd let out a chuckle, it was like the most beautiful hymn that I'd heard. Unfortunately, when she was with me, it was such a rare sight. That had to mean something, right? And now, back in my house shack, I was faced with the loneliness again. Such a familiar scene, me without my mate, sad and just wanting nothing more in the world than to have her here in my arms. But maybe she would be happier in Florida, where she would be free from werewolves, and ultimately me. My inner wolf yelped in pain at that thought. But we want her. He pleaded with me. We need her. I ignored him. He was right. 100%. It was impossible for me to envision a future without her that wouldn't involve me completely depressed for the rest of my life. But what kind of man would I be if I didn't put the needs of my love before my own? Whimpering, my wolf fled in, Fine, he huffed. Maybe Jason can take better care of her. I didn't want to admit it, but there was so much more that he could give her than I could. For one, he was the alpha of the next territory over. That right there gave him power, wealth, and respect, and the loyalty from the entire pack. And through extension, all of that was given to Nora as well. Plus, he had the capability of allowing her to visit Florida, even move there. After all, even if she was with me and I was still the beta, 2B, then I would still need to get Jason's permission to have Nora go to Florida, seeing as he's the alpha and has final say on who comes and goes. Too busy wallowing in self-pity, I almost didn't register it when there was a loud banging on my front door. I asked, leaning up with a wince, one of my ribs still setting itself. "Vincent, open up." Came a female's voice from the other side. Who could this be? "Just open the door," I huffed, not caring if it were someone here to kill me or steal from me. Nora was gone, so there was nothing left to protect. The door slammed open, banging loudly into the wall behind it. In the doorway stood a tall, blonde werewolf who glared down at me with disgust. "What are you doing here?" "Just sulking," she spat at he, crossing her arms in front of her. "Who are you?" I grunted, struggling to sit up. I held my hand to my side to help my ribs stay in place so that it mended correctly. Jessie, Nora's best friend for school, poked her head out from behind the werewolf. "Robin," she gasped. "We need your help. Please." The werewolf glanced back at her, shifting her stance so that her body blocked the human from my view. I cocked my eyebrow at her and she just threw her hands up in exasperation. "Now's not the time to talk about that," she stated. "Jessie asked me to sneak her here so that she could get you to save her friend, your mate." Jessie poked her head through again, a wide smile on her face. "Yeah," she said. "Totally. And guess what?" I walked up to Crystal as she was kicking Kyle's ass. Kyle from school. Remember him? Anyway, I asked her for her help, and she just stared at me with this look, and I knew it. I knew that I was destined to be a werewolf's mate. The werewolf, Crystal supposedly, pinched the skin above her nose. There were tons of humans around at the pool party, and, of course, I get stuck with the loud one. She grimaced, but she blushed nonetheless at the way Jessie happily declared that she was her mate. I didn't even see her there since I was busy talking to Nora, but once we met in the forest, something clicked. Instantaneously I felt jealous. There was Crystal and Jessie, two people who have never met before in their lives. Yet, in just a short matter of time, Jessie was already head over heels with the idea of being mated to someone of the rest of her life. She understood that it wasn't about being a dog's property, but more about finding that other being who will love her unconditionally. But Mr. Abin, Jessie wind, and I couldn't help but notice how calm Crystal was even with her mate speaking to me. Another werewolf. "Nora's in danger. We need your help. Please." In a flash, I was on my feet, claws out and fangs bared, my instinct screaming at me to find my mate. It was difficult to even focus my sight on anything. Red clouded my vision and my limbs ached to tear apart when my Nora was facing. "Where?" I growled, my voice deepened animalistic. Fuck what I mentioned earlier about letting Nora go on her merry own little way. No, she was mine, and mine only. Mine to protect, mine to hold, mine to love. Mine, just mine. Crystal bared her teeth at me, pushing Jessie out of the way of the doorframe. "She's with Jason, at his house," she said. "Follow me. I have a secret trail that I use to go between territories, and we need to hurry." Jessie piped in. "Jason said he's going to use the last resort on Nora." There was nothing else in the world that I could focus on now. All I needed to do was get to my mate. Find her. My wolf demanded. Get her back. I'd plan on it. Crystal phased, throwing Jessie on her back carry her as she led me back to the territory. My eyes stayed fixed on her figure, knowing full well that she would lead me down the fastest route to my mate. The sun was slowly getting lower and I sprinted at full speed, dirt flying high behind me as I bolted. Surprisingly, Crystal's path did lead us back to the old territory rather quickly, and it was pretty well hidden. She led us down close to a river where there were scores of granite rocks that created a sort of natural maze as they jutted out from the earth. Through various twists and turns that even a werewolf would have trouble navigating through, we made it through the border and onto the other side of the old territory. Mate, 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 my wolf chanted, eager to rescue her. There was no way I could allow Jason to take her away from me forever. It was one thing to take her momentarily while she was still alive that gave me a small percentage of winning her back eventually. But if she was dead, I might as well kill myself shortly after seeing as how my light in the world would be gone. Eventually Jason's house came into view. The sun completely set. Unable to help myself, I unleashed Anne's surplusting howl to let Nora know that I was here to save her, that her mate was here to take her back. Fighting for life. As a little girl, I used to believe in the silly notion that when my prince would come along, I'd instinctually know. He'd just show up, sweep me off my feet, and carry me off into the rainbow sunset to get our wonderful life together. In my mind, he was supposed to be a human who looked like a model, with a killer smile that would melt my heart like chocolate, turning my insides into mush with just the magic of his voice. However, now I knew that that was just a silly childish notion. As I paced Jason's bedroom, I contemplated on whether Vincent truly was my soulmate. Sure, he claimed that I was his mate, but I had yet to feel the pull as strong as he does. That was normal, though. Humans didn't have the emotional capability to experience devotion that deep. I was told by teachers. Regardless of my doubts and frustrations, there was a little glimmer of something that resided in my heart for Vincent, and it was that sparkle that drove my urge to see him again so that I could apologize and hopefully stop breaking his heart. But I couldn't ignore the annoying fact that, technically speaking, Jason was my soulmate. Vincent was meant to be my second mate, in case Jason or put me in danger. And I was in danger, point blank. Was that why I felt some kind of need to have Vincent around? No, because I'd been in danger before with the swimming pool, the vampire, and if Jason really is crazy, then I was always in danger while in his presence with that in mind. I should have always felt that need to have Vincent here. Therefore, I could only reach one conclusion. I was starting to like my werewolf mate. Son of a bitch. Fine, I'll admit it. Later. Right now I needed to get out of crazy Jason's house since there was no way I'd ever spread it for him or let him kill me. There was no more escaping. I realized, which meant that my only way out of this would be fighting my way out. Jason, I called, stomping over to the bed, yanking the brass standing lamp that was in the corner of the room, ripping the cord as I did so. Semir, what is it? Mate, he asked from the other side of the door. I'm going to neuter you, so get in here. I yelled, flexing my fingers around the lamp and bracing my legs so that I could swing it with all my might as soon as he came in. There was a sigh from the other side of the door. Really? He asked. This is how you want to play? Play. I'm serious. Jason, I said, stomping my foot in frustration. I'm going to kick your ass, and then I'm going to leave and you'll never see me. The bedroom door flung off its hinges, crashing down to the floor, revealing a very pissed-off Jason in the doorway. He had his fists balled with rage, his eyes glowing red with his alpha power. You're not leaving me, he snarled, baring his large canines at me. Yes, I am, I spat. Now get into my way or else I'll kick your fuzzy ass. I swung the lamp towards him. He jerked back, narrowing his eyes at me. So you've chosen last resort. I see. He growled. Fine. He took one step forward and I lunged at him, slamming the brass rod into the side of his head. It hit with a loud clang and the rod vibrated my entire body as it made contact. Apparently Jason's head was made of solid rock because he didn't even look fazed by it, instead just cocking his eyebrow at me, as if asking if that was all I had. And no, it wasn't. I swung the rod continuously, smacking him over and over, grunting with each beat as I did so. Soon my arms grew tired, my damaged shoulder throbbing from all the movement. The rod was completely bent, looking like a boomerang, and Jason still stood there as if I had just thrown a wadded-up piece of paper at him. Seriously, I cried out, tossing the destroyed lamp to the floor in irritation. Jason chuckled. Mate, there's no way a fragile human like you can take down a full, grown, alpha male now. I couldn't give up. Summoning all of my adrenaline, fueled energy, I scurried over the bed towards the closet. I had to IND some kind of weapon to use against Jason. I slammed the door open and just resulted in throwing whatever I could find at him, clothes, shoes, belts, whatever I could get my frantic hands on. The entire time Jason stalked forward, batting some items out of the way while letting others hit him as if they were nothing. He turned his head to the left, popping his neck. His veins stood out on his forehead, and I could tell that he was muster all of his strength to not phase on the spot and shred me to little pieces. Mate, he cooed, holding his hands up in a non-threatening manner. I'm just going to ask one more time before it's too late. Are you going to be a good girl and submit? Yes or no? That asshole was totally speaking down to me as if I were just some emotionally unstable human who was just throwing a tantrum. No. I screamed, running forward and thrusting my foot out to kick him right where the sun don't shine. Jason groaned and bent over in pain. I sprinted around him, making a beeline for the door. I figured that if I made it downstairs to the kitchen, then I could grab an knife and use that to defend myself. Then I could fight a much better fight and possibly even win. Jason roared with fury and I felt myself thrown off to the ground, my body being flown over the upstairs banister. My body slammed against the heart of the floor of the first story with a thud, all the air escaping out of my lungs. My head throbbed like crazy and my limbs tingled as I struggled to move them so that I could at least have some small percentage of making it out of this fight. I looked up to see Jason sauntering down the stairs, his head high and chest puffed out, trying to look bigger and thus more intimidating. And it worked too, making my breath grow labored and a cold sweat break out on my forehead. I struggled to get to my feet, still a little disoriented from being thrown down the stairs. The entire house seemed to be spinning as I sadly attempted to run to the kitchen, having to lean up against the wall a majority of the way there. The entire time I could hear Jason's deafening footsteps behind me, taunting me as he got closer and closer. Just think about it. Mate, he said from behind me, you'll be the alpha mate of this territory. I can give you anything your heart desires. I'm a very powerful man and can anything happen for you. Just imagine it, you, by my side, waking up in my bed every morning. You carrying our pups in your stomach, and you'll look after them and keep house while I'm out taking care of the territory. Then I'll come home and have the dinner you make me, and then we'll up to our bed and fuck like animals each and every night. My precious mate. Just think about it. He was so close that I could feel his hot breath on the back of my neck, sending a shiver throughout my core. Before I could answer, there was a noise from outside, howl. A loud howl that I've heard before. All that sent a tingling sensation through me, making me perk up and find my gumption. I spun around to face the pissed-off Jason, who bared his teeth in the direction of the howl. I'm not into bestiality. I shouted at him and then hocked a huge loogie into his surprised face. Sure, without a doubt, it was perhaps the most childish and idiotic thing I could have ever done to a furious werewolf. But the look on his face as my vicious spit, snort mixture ran down his face was hilarious. But of course, Jason didn't see it that way. I could have been the howl outside or my loogie. Or both. Definitely my loogie played a part though, but he phased into his wolf form, towering over me in his animalistic body, his muzzle dangerously close to my face. His teeth were long and jagged, yellow with just a hint of red to really get my terror flowing. I screamed in fear, and almost as soon as I cried out, there was a loud crashing noise in one of the other rooms in the house. Jason snarled and darted over to the source of the noise, completely forgetting about me for the moment. Yes. Ignoring the snarling and sounds of claws and fangs against body, I sprinted into the kitchen, throwing open drawer after drawer to find some kind of weapon to defend myself with. The first one had of mitts, the second had plastic wrap, and the third had packets of ketchup from fast food restaurants. Damn it. I snatched a peppermint I found in the condiment drawer, pocketing it, and then returning on my mission to find a weapon. The noises of the werewolf fight sounded out throughout the house as I frantically looked for something sharp. There a yelp and then silence. I held my breath and stared towards the dark hallway, afraid of whoever would come walking in. Footsteps thudded against the hard floor, and soon the silhouette of a man came into view, a buff man, but not overly huge like Jason. Vincent. I whimpered, moving behind the counter in case I was wrong. My fingers grasped the tiled top as I anxiously awaited a reply. Nora. I heard him croak, making me lose all composure. I broke down, tears falling down my face like rivers. Vincent, is that really you? I gasped, feeling as if we were being reunited after 5 years instead of just a day. He moved further down the hallway, finally entering the kitchen, and sure enough, there he was. He looked really beat up with gashes and bruises all over his body. He moved with a limp and he was hunched over, but as soon as he laid his eyes on me, his posture straightened and he dashed at incredible speed over to me, wrapping me tightly in his arms and yanking me into his chest. He rocked us gently, his face buried in my messy hair. It's okay, Nora, he cooed, his voice vibrating his chest. I'm here. I got you. I couldn't help feeling safe in Vincent's embrace. I buried myself further into his hold, my head resting on his shoulder. How'd you find me? I wondered. Your friends Jessie and Crystal helped me, he answered, looking behind him down the hallway, his hold growing tighter. I have to get you out of here. Jason's only unconscious, so we need to leave before he wakes up. I nodded and allowed Vincent to lead me by the hand over to the front door of Jason's house. I was tremendously obvious the change in my demeanor and attitude as soon as Vincent came to rescue me. Earlier, I had been fearful for my life, even going so far as to attempt to fight an alpha, but now, I felt almost relaxed and at ease. It must have been true what they say. Vincent's role as a second mate really is to help take care of the alpha mate in case the alpha grew too dangerous. I was thankful he was here, and I knew that there was something that I needed to say. Vincent, I said, trying to get his attention as he dragged us towards the forest near Jason's house. I struggled to keep up with him, stumbling over my feet as I followed behind. I need to tell you something. Just wait, he said, his broad back to me. Crystal and Jessie are waiting for us to help us cross the border. But I really need to say this. I whined, yanking my arm so that would get him to slow down. Vincent whimpered, looking conflicted. Obviously, he wanted to continue to get me as far away from Jason as possible, but I could tell that he was interested in what I had to say. What is it? He finally asked, his hand still firmly planted on my arm. I opened my mouth, but no noise came out. It was dry and I struggled to think up a way that I could apologize for being such a mean person to him. Although he deserved it sometimes. But at least 30% of it is my fault, and I needed to own up to it. Sorry. I breathed, too flustered to come up with any other words. I'm sorry, Vincent. He stood there, jaw dropped and eyes wide. Well, he stammered, running his free hand through his hair. I wasn't expecting that. Don't act so shocked. I scowled but bit my tongue, not wanting to regress to my past behaviors. I just needed to say it. I spat, pursing my lips. He nodded, turning his gaze back to the house behind us. Look, Nora, if you really want to make it up to me, I'll forget everything if you just keep moving, okay? He said, going back to leading me through the dark forest. The sun had completely set by now. It was hard to see anything out in the wilderness, but Vincent led me through, warning me whenever there was a low branch of a high root. Other than that, he was rather silent, not trying to talk me into being with him or saying any kind of lovey-dovey stuff which made me oddly uneasy. I began to wonder if I had somehow squashed all the affection that he had for me with my piss-through attitude. I shook that worry from my head. Now was not the time to fret over stuff like that. I had to focus on getting away from Jason. I was glad to hear that Jessie was still safe, but there was a pain in my chest over the loss of Danny. She died because of me, and without a doubt, Reed would die soon too of heartbreak if he hadn't already succumbed to the injuries he got from Jason. But unfortunately, I couldn't dwell on that either. If I didn't want Vincent's blood to be on my hands too, then I needed to concentrate on getting out of the territory. Vincent grunted and cleared his throat, still keeping up his fast pace. There is one thing I need to ask you, though, he said, his voice shaky and unsure. What is it? I asked. Still not looking back at me, he took a deep breath, his wide shoulders rising and falling. I just want to know, and you don't have to answer this right now. It can wait until we get over the border. But I wanted to know if once I rescued you, did you want to stay with me or have me escort you to Florida? Because I will if that's what you want. I'll send you to Florida for you to be free from. He cleared his throat again. Free from me. If he wasn't moving us so quickly, I would have frozen in my tracks. Vincent was offering to let me go to Florida and be free of werewolves, and ultimately, free of him. The cynical part of me thought that this was test, that there was some kind of catch here. But the rational side of me told me that he was being completely honest with me, just wanting what would make me happy. Whatever you want, he said, but I just won't let you stay with him. His voice morphed into an animalistic growl at the end of his statement, his hatred of the idea of me being with Jason totally obvious. Well, I wasn't going to stay with him, so that's not going to be an issue, I mumbled. Yet Vince truly posed an offer in front of me. Did I want to stay with him, or did I want to leave to Florida? Before all of this, I would have chosen Florida in a heartbeat, eager to live a normal, human life free from werewolves. However, now that I actually had the freedom to choose, I didn't know what I wanted exactly. Yes, I wanted to leave the territory, but at the same time, I kind of liked Vincent and didn't want to be without him. Sure, he got on my nerves all the time. He was super possessive, and he was a control freak at times, and he had an authority complex, and he dictated how I was supposed to sleep, and he told me what to wear, and he wouldn't let me talk to other males, and he, yeah, but still, he was growing on me for reasons unknown, except for the main fact that he was completely, utterly, and irrevocably in love with me. And I knew that he would do everything in his power to make sure that I was taken care of. Unlike my parents who abandoned me as soon as they found out that I was mated to a werewolf, and unlike Jason who killed Danny and wanted to kill me, Vincent had an unconditional love for me and a drive to do what was best for my well-being. and that just poses the question of whether it was best for me to stay with him or leave. Get behind me, Vincent yelled, letting go of my arm and phasing into his wolf form. He crouched in front of me, growling loudly and baring his teeth, the hair on his back standing straight up. The darkness in the forest prevented me from seeing whatever threat Vincent could sense, but it didn't take a rocket scientist to deduce that it was Jason. Should I run? I whimpered, my leg feeling like jelly and my chest feeling cold with anxiety. Vincent will protect me, I told myself, but I couldn't help the feeling of impending doom. Vincent turned back to me, his fangs long, but not nearly as dangerous looking as Jason's. He nodded, giving a small growl as if he was telling me to hurry. I spun on my heels and bolted through the forest, making it about 3 feet before I tripped over a tree root, stumbling onto the hard ground like a stupid person does in a horror movie whenever danger comes. I scraped my hands up pretty badly, feeling the blood drip from them as I stood back up. Vincent must have smelt it because he turned around, nostrils flared. He let out a huff of exasperation and made his way over to me, his wolf form dwarfing me as he lumbered forward. When he was in front of me, he took a gentle hold of my cut-up hands with his claws, leaning down to lap at them with his massive wolf tongue. I watched in awe as the cuts diminished to tiny scars in just a matter of seconds, recalling how the mating mark that he'd put on my shoulder disappeared in the car the day we met. And speaking of my shoulder, he turned to lap at my chewed-up shoulder, trying to heal the gashes for me, his need to take of me taking priority over Jason. Vincent. I shrieked out in horror as I saw Jason's large wolf form emerge from the shadows. Jason lunged at us, tackling Vincent from behind, the two of them stumbling onto the forest floor. Vincent stood and slashed at Jason, whose wolf form had at least a feet on Vincent's, hitting a couple of times, actually slicing open the alpha's flesh. Jason howled in pain, chomping down on Vincent's arm and thrashing his head, making him yelp. Stop! I screamed at Jason. Let go of him. I searched around for something to use to help save Vincent from Jason's attack, finding a fallen branch that was pretty thick and looked about 3 feet long. That would work. I snatched up the branch and sped forward, slamming the wood onto Jason's face, making him jerk back and snarl at me. With a mighty swing of his arm, Jason sent flying back until his back hit a tree. Hard. Vincent let out a yelp that pulled at my heartstring before he quickly stumbled back over to me, raising his claws. He glanced back at me for a moment, his eyes raking over my form to make sure I was okay. Jason snarled at us. Possessive, mate, he roared. Time for the last resort. Vincent lunged from his protective stance and me, crashing into the other werewolf with a loud bang. Groan and yelps could be heard behind me as I ran with all my might to the safety of wherever Crystal and Jessie were. All the while he literally fought for my life against the other wolf. I was almost out of breath when I heard a loud yelp. I turned back to see Vincent on his back, the larger wolf towering over him, jaws wide open, showcasing rows of jagged teeth. Jason looked as if he was about to chomp down on Vincent's neck, and my mind raced with ways I could try to save him. Obviously fighting was out of the question, so I did the only thing that could pop into my mind. Hey, I shouted, jumping up and down, waving my arms. Both wolves stopped and turned to face me, Vincent growling at my stupidity. I trembled, my jaw quivering. First wolf to catch me gets to keep me. I couldn't believe what I had just said. I mean, I had practically promised myself to whatever wolf could run faster, which I was willing to bet was Jason, seeing as how his legger and his paws were much larger. I spun back around on my heels, scurrying down the eerie nighttime forest, dreadfully aware of the heavy paws sounding after me. I glanced behind my shoulder, terrified to see Jason sprinting after me, a mere 10 feet away. I tripped over a root again. Wow, I suck and hit my head on the ground hard. I could feel my nose bleeding, the blood gushing out and running down my lips. I rolled over on my back, nearly wailing when I saw that it was Jason who was closer. I put my hands up in front of me, as if that would protect me, screaming out, "Vincent, help me!" Jason trotted up to me, his ears flat, growing at my outburst. His giant's paws stepped closer and closer, the ground vibrating every powerful step that he took. His giant muzzle slowly made its way down to me, ready to steal me away or kill me, when a loud snarl came from behind him. He jerked back in confusion and Vincent leapt up in the air, crashing down on his back, chomping down on the back of his neck, thrashing his head back and forth furiously. Jason threw back his head and howled with pain, so loud that I had to cover up my ears. I closed my eyes, my heart leaping up into my throat. A series of growls and teeth against teeth rang out, furthering my anxiety. I peeked through my fingers to see Vincent still on top of Jason, thrashing his head to and fro, blood running down his muzzle as he attacked the other werewolf. Jason began to buck up and down, managing to loosen Vincent's hold, Vincent being flung onto the hard ground with a crash. As soon as he landed, Jason swung his paw at his head. A sickening crack resonated as soon as contact was made. "No, Vincent," I screamed, worried that he had lost and that Jason would carry me away. And then an even scarier thought entered, that I might not ever see Vincent again. Vincent snarled and leapt to his feet, swinging his own mighty paws at Jason, slicing open the latter's neck with his sharp claws. Jason choked out in pain, his blood splattering all over the reddening forest floor. He locked eyes with me as he stumbled forward, his wolf form seeming to shrink as he reverted back to his human form. The gash in his throat from Vincent was still prominent, deep. It must have prevented any oxygen from getting into his system, slowing down his heart and brain, preventing him from healing. "Damn, Vincent. That's brutal." Jason collapsed to his knees, his gaze still on me. Vincent, still in his wolf form, stalked over to him, putting a large hand on the back of his human head, shoving his face down into the ground with a sickening squashing sound. I sat up on my knees, wondering just what the fuck had happened. It all seemed to have occurred so fast that I barely had time to even register it. But Vincent, it was definitely clear that Vincent had fought for me. He fought for me, and he won. He killed Jason, the alpha, my first mate. I couldn't say anything. I felt that I should thank him for saving my life, but the sight of Jason's lifeless body made me freeze up, struggling to form a sentence. Vincent slowly morphed back into his human form, naked and covered in blood. His face was bruised, and there was a gash above his right eyebrow, plus his nose was all misshaped and seemed to be cocked to the side. Nevertheless, he stomped over to me, and, without a word, tossed me over his shoulder and carried me off through the forest. "Mine," he growled, his arm impossibly tight, almost making me wince. I don't know what possessed me or how I could possibly be starting to feel comfortable in Vincent's hold, but I could feel my body relaxing and my body went lax. Yours, I mumbled back. 5 years later, wow, this was it. Finally, after 4 years of hard work, I was finally about to graduate from the University of Miami with a bachelor's in marine biology. I eagerly bounced up and down in my seat, waiting for the announcer to call my name so that I could walk up on stage and get my degree. Never in a million years would I have ever thought that I'd be here. After all the drama with Jason, I went to Florida. I completed high school here and even got accepted into the university on a full scholarship. Florida was just as I suspected, but it was also a little different. It wasn't technically a human territory. Sure, humans had a lot of rights and human mates weren't viewed as property. But instead, humans, werewolves, and vampires, and genies, they revealed themselves during my sophomore year of college. And I was pretty bummed that I never ran into one to get them to magically help me pass my calculus final were viewed as equal. Everybody lived in harmony and respected one another. If a human was selected to be a mate, then they were actually given a choice of whether or not they wanted to be with the wolf or vampire. And most of the time, I discovered, they accepted and lived their lives happily with their supernatural lover. I still stayed in contact with my friends back in the old territory. After Danny died, Reed shortly died thereafter. I couldn't attend the funeral, but I heard that it was sad but celebrated their love dearly. Crystal told me that they were even buried in the same coffin. Speaking of Crystal, she and Jessie lived happily together, helping to improve relations between humans and werewolves in the territory. I heard that Kyle mated with a female werewolf who was pretty dominant and put him in his place pretty frequently. After Jason's death, there was no beta to become the alpha, so there was an election to find a new one, and a wolf named Rosa won. From what Jessie told me in our phone calls, she was a kind-hearted alpha who wanted to break down the borders between territories in order to help reunite families who were split up after the Great War. And Vincent, Nora, the announcer on stage, called out. I stood up from my seat, trying, and failing, to maintain my excitement. I practically skipped the whole way up the stage, shaking the dean's hand as he handed me my degree. I looked out over the crowd of friends and families, seeing Vincent in the third row, standing and cheering wildly for me. Go Nora, he hooted, holding our newborn son, David, in his arms. Vincent was a wonderful husband and showed me how great it was to be a werewolf's mate every day. And every day he showed me how much he loved me by taking care of me and our son, making me feel guilty over how badly I had treated him back in the territory. I would still apologize to him occasionally, and each and every time he would put a finger to my lips, saying that he was partly to blame as well. And of course, he was still pretty possessive, getting jealous whenever a guy would look my way or growling at the TV when I would muse that a certain actor was a little attractive. But he was my soulmate and I loved him. I love him very much. Thank you all so much for joining me on this dangerous werewolf journey. I hope you had your hearts pumping and your minds racing. Don't forget to subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and come back for more exciting and dangerous tales. Until next time, stay safe and keep that adventurous spirit alive.